3 days after the human ship left Carithian territory, reports started coming to human space. They didn't come through official channels. They came through the secret network of traders, smugglers, and information sellers that formed the galaxy's real news system. Dr. Yu-Jin stood in the meeting room of Earth's moon station. She was humanity's main expert on alien politics. Around her were floating computer screens showing data from many star systems. Admiral Sung-ho sat at the head of the table. His old, weathered face showed nothing as he looked at the reports. "Tell me this is a joke," the Admiral said flatly. Yu-Jin shook her head. Her computer pen danced through the floating screens as she put information together. "I wish it was, sir. In the 3 days since Ambassador Hyunwoo's incident, we've seen major movement throughout the Carithian Empire and nearby territories." "What do you mean by major movement?" asked Counselor Hae-won. She was Earth's representative to the Human Colonial Assembly. She had arrived at Moon Station 2 hours ago looking worried and tired. "The Carithian military is in chaos," Yu-Jin reported. "Their secret communication networks are still down. Our backdoors were more thorough than even our own spy division knew. Fleet commanders are working independently because they can't get or check orders from Central Command. Several border territories have declared independence. 2 species that were paying tribute have officially asked for military protection from their Carithian protectors." She pulled up a star map showing the Carithian Empire in red. Yellow dots appeared across it like a spreading disease. And here's where it gets interesting. Other species who have been paying tribute to the Carithians for centuries are asking questions. The data Ambassador Hyunwoo sent out, the technical details, the economic exploitation, the historical records, it's gone viral. Every species in 20-star sectors now knows the Carithians aren't as unbeatable as they claimed. Admiral Seung-ho leaned back, rubbing his head. "So one ambassador with a broken pencil just accidentally destroyed a 600-world empire." "Actually," a new voice said from the door, "it wasn't an accident." Ambassador Hyunwoo walked in, followed by Captain Dae-hyun and Commander Minji. The ambassador looked very well rested for someone who had just caused a galactic incident. Counselor Hae-won stood up quickly. "Ambassador, do you know what you've done?" "Yes," Hyunwoo replied simply. He took a seat at the table without asking. "I established humanity's position in galactic politics. We're not prey, we're not servants, and we're definitely not paying tribute to anyone. You humiliated a galactic power." Hae-won's voice rose. "The Carithians have thousands of warships. They could what?" Hyunwoo interrupted calmly. "Attack us. With what coordination? Their command and control is broken. Invade human space? With what money? Their banking system is still recovering, and their tribute relationships are falling apart. Send assassins? We already found and kicked out 17 Carithian spies from human colonies 2 hours ago." Admiral Sung-ho held up a hand, making the counselor be quiet. "Ambassador, explain it to us. What exactly was your plan?" Hyunwoo pulled up his own floating screen, showing a timeline of events. "The Carithians made first contact with humanity 7 months ago. Right away they tried to make us a tributary. That's their normal way of doing things. We played along, acting compliant while our spy services broke into every major system they had." Captain Dae-hyun continued the story. "The ambassador asked that the human ship be sent through Carithian space as a diplomatic courtesy. It was a setup from the beginning. You deliberately provoked them." Yu-Jin looked shocked. "I gave them exactly what they expected," Hyunwoo corrected. "A chance to show dominance over a lesser species. They'd done it thousands of times before. Why would we be different? But that overconfidence was their weakness. While they were getting ready to flex their military muscle, we were mapping every vulnerability they had." Minji turned on another display, showing complex computer code and network diagrams. The broken pencil was theater. The real operation was 2 months of cyber preparation. Every system we touched, every database we looked at during friendly diplomatic exchanges, we left backdoors. Command networks, economic systems, communication arrays, even their historical files. "The broadcast I sent," Hyunwoo continued, "had information the Carithians had hidden for centuries. Their tributary species didn't know how weak the Carithian military really is compared to modern standards. They didn't know the economic exploitation was much worse than claimed. They didn't know that dozens of species had been forcibly taken rather than voluntarily joining the empire." He zoomed in on one group of data, And most importantly, they didn't know that Lord Vaxthul personally ordered the killing of diplomatic messengers from 3 different species in the past 10 years. After those species had already agreed to pay tribute, the room went silent. That was a clear violation of the Galactic Concord, the closest thing to international law in known space. Admiral Sung Ho whistled low. You didn't just embarrass them. You exposed them as tyrants. Exactly, Hyunwoo agreed. The broken pencil was symbolic. I was telling Vaxthul that humanity doesn't follow rules designed to make us servants. We make our own rules, and rule number 1, nobody threatens humans without consequences. Counselor Haiwan sat down slowly. Her anger was changing into something like respect. So what happens now? Yujin pulled up the latest reports. The Carithian Empire is breaking apart. Not completely, not yet, but the cracks are showing. Several border territories are fighting back openly. Species paying tribute are demanding to renegotiate their agreements. And 3 different species have sent diplomatic messages to human space asking about trade agreements and mutual defense pacts. They want to be our allies, Daehyun said with clear satisfaction. The species who are paying tribute to the Carithians want humanity to protect them instead. Which means, Admiral Seung-ho concluded, that Ambassador Hyunwoo didn't just avoid paying tribute. He turned humanity into a competing power center in this region of space. Hyunwoo smiled slightly. The Carithians work on the idea that might makes right. They forgot that might comes in many forms. Military strength is one, but information, timing, and psychological warfare, those multiply your power. Humans learned that thousands of years ago. He stood up, walking to the star map and pointing at the spreading chaos in Carithian territory. Every species in this sector just learned that the Carithians can be challenged, that their military isn't unbeatable, that their economic system exploits people, and most importantly, that there's a new species on the galactic stage who won't play by the old rules. The question is, Counselor Haiwan said carefully, what do we do with this opportunity? We do what humanity has always done, Hyunwoo replied. We adapt. 3 species want to talk, we talk. They want trade agreements, we trade. They want defense pacts, we defend. We build a group based on helping each other instead of exploitation. We show the galaxy there's an alternative to the Carithian way. Admiral Seung-ho nodded slowly. And when the Carithians try to strike back? Hyunwoo's face hardened. Then we teach them the same lesson we've been teaching tyrants and bullies for 10,000 years. Humans don't back down. We double down. Commander Minji pulled up a secret file. We've already positioned 3 more fleets at strategic points along the Carithian border. Intelligence suggests they're too disorganized for a major attack. But if they try anything, we'll be ready. What about the broken pencil? Yujin asked suddenly. I heard you kept it. Hyunwoo reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the beat-up pencil. He placed it on the table. This is a reminder. Not for the Carithians, for us. It reminds us that humanity's greatest weapon isn't our warships or our technology. It's our ability to see an impossible situation and find a way to win anyway. He picked up the pencil again, looking at it. A broken pencil is still useful. It can still write, still mark, still create. It's not what you have, it's how you use it. That's the human advantage. We turn weakness into strength. We take something broken and make it work. We face impossible odds and find the angle everyone else missed. Admiral Sung-ho smiled grimly. And now the entire galaxy knows it. Not yet, Hyunwoo corrected. Right now this is limited to one sector. But word will spread. The story of the human ambassador who insulted a galactic lord with a broken pencil and walked away. That's going to become legend. And legends change the rules. He put the pencil back in his pocket. Within a year, every species in known space will have heard about this. They'll know that humanity can't be scared. They'll know we don't accept things just because that's how they've always been. And they'll know that if you threaten us, we won't just defend ourselves. We'll take apart your entire power structure from the inside out. Counselor Haiwan shook her head in disbelief. You planned all of this from one diplomatic meeting. No, Hyunwoo said simply. I planned this from 10,000 years of human history. Every war, every revolution, every time we faced death and survived anyway. I just applied the lessons to a galactic scale. He looked around the room at the military officers, politicians, and analysts. The Carithians thought they were dealing with primitives. The year was 2247, and humanity had finally stopped being alone in the universe, even if they didn't know it yet. Dr. Hana Kim stared at the coffee machine in the break room of the International Space Research Station, willing it to work faster. She had been awake for 36 hours straight, and her eyes felt like someone had rubbed sand into them. Around her, other scientists chatted excitedly about the news that had every screen in the station lit up like Christmas. They had found something near Saturn, something big, something old, something that definitely was not human. Hana didn't care much for the excitement. She preferred numbers and patterns to people and their loud enthusiasm, but even she had to admit this was different. In all the years humans had been exploring space, building colonies on Mars and mining asteroids for resources, they had never found proof of alien life. Not a single microbe, not a fossil, nothing, until 3 days ago. The derelict ship had been spotted by a mining crew near Titan, one of Saturn's moons. At first they thought it was just another asteroid. But asteroids don't have perfect geometric patterns on their surface. Asteroids don't emit faint energy signatures that have been dead for 50,000 years. The ship was massive, 3 times bigger than the station Hana worked on, and the station was already the size of a small city. Initial scans showed it was old. Really old. The kind of old that made human civilization look like it had been born yesterday. A recovery team had gone out immediately. They had spent 2 days exploring the dark corridors of the ship, finding nothing but empty rooms and strange symbols carved into walls that seemed to glow faintly when humans got close. Everything valuable or useful had either been taken long ago or had decayed into dust. Everything except one thing. They had found it in what looked like a control room. A panel made of some kind of crystal that nobody could identify. It was about the size of a dining table, covered in symbols that moved and shifted like they were alive. When people got close, the symbols would rearrange themselves, glowing brighter, as if reacting to their presence. The recovery team had carefully cut it free from the ship and brought it back to the station. That was yesterday. Since then, every expert they had tried to figure out what it was and how it worked. Nobody had succeeded. Hana had watched the attempts from her workstation, shaking her head at the obvious approaches. Military codes, mathematical sequences, binary patterns, even music, because someone had watched too many old science fiction movies and thought aliens might communicate through musical notes. Nothing worked. The symbols just kept shifting and glowing like they were laughing at every attempt. Her coffee finally finished brewing. Hana grabbed the cup and headed back to her small office, passing by the main observation deck where crowds of scientists and engineers were gathered, all trying to get a glimpse of the artifact through the reinforced windows of the containment lab. "Did you hear?" someone said behind her. She didn't turn around, but the voice belonged to Daehyun Park, one of the station's engineers. He was one of the few people who tried to talk to her regularly, despite her obvious preference for being left alone. "They're bringing in specialists from Earth, cryptographers, linguists, even some religious experts." "Waste of time," Hana muttered, taking a sip of her coffee. It was too hot and burned her tongue. "Maybe," Daehyun said, falling into step beside her. He was tall and had an easy smile that made other people relax around him. Hana found it annoying how people always seemed to like him. "But what else can we do? We've tried everything." "You've tried the obvious things," Hana corrected. "That's different." Daehyun raised an eyebrow. "You think you can do better?" Hana shrugged. "Probably not. But I would fail in more interesting ways." He laughed at that, which was another annoying thing about him. He always laughed at her jokes, even when she wasn't trying to be funny. She spent the rest of that day avoiding people and reading through the analysis reports on the artifact. The data was fascinating. The crystal seemed to react differently depending on who was near it. When aggressive people approached it, the symbols turned sharp and angular. When calm people got close, they became smooth and flowing. It was like the artifact was reading emotions or intentions, but that didn't make sense. How could a machine read emotions? Unless it wasn't really a machine. Unless it was something else entirely. 6 months passed. 6 months of the brightest minds humanity had to offer, all taking turns trying to unlock the artifact's secrets. 6 months of failure. The military wanted to cut it open, see what made it work. The scientists argued against it, saying they would destroy whatever made it special. The politicians on Earth were getting impatient. This was the biggest discovery in human history, and they had nothing to show for it except a pretty glowing rock that nobody understood. That was when Hana got the call. She was in her quarters, actually sleeping for once, when her communication panel chimed. The message was from Director Yoon, the head of the research station. It was marked urgent. Hana dragged herself out of bed and opened the message. Director Yoon's tired face appeared on the screen. "The man looked like he hadn't slept in weeks, Dr. Kim," he said, his voice formal but strained. "We need your help with the artifact." Hana frowned. "I'm a computational linguist. I study how information is structured and transmitted. What do you need me for?" "Everything else has failed," Director Yoon said simply. "Your file says you've solved 3 supposedly unsolvable code problems in your career. You think differently than other people. Right now we need different. What happens if I fail?" Hana asked. Director Yoon's expression darkened. "If you can't figure it out in 3 months, we're giving it to the military. They'll take it apart piece by piece until they understand it, even if that destroys it in the process." Hana felt something twist in her stomach. The idea of destroying something so old, so unknown, just because humans were impatient and scared, felt wrong. "When do I start?" she asked. "Tomorrow," Director Yoon said. "Get some sleep tonight." "You'll need it," the message ended. Hana sat in the darkness of her quarters, staring at the blank screen. Somewhere on this station was an artifact created by beings who had traveled the stars when humans were still learning to make fire. It had survived 50,000 years in the void of space, waiting. Waiting for what? That was the question nobody could answer. Hana laid back down, but she didn't sleep. Her mind was already racing, thinking about patterns and possibilities, about symbols that moved and glowed, about a lock that had kept its secrets for longer than human civilization had existed. Tomorrow, she would meet the artifact. Tomorrow, she would begin trying to understand what 50,000 years of silence was trying to say. She had 3 months. 3 months to solve a puzzle that might not even have a solution. The first time Hana stood in front of the artifact, she understood why everyone had failed. They were asking the wrong questions. The containment lab was cold and sterile, all white walls and bright lights. The artifact sat in the center of the room on a raised platform, surrounded by enough scanning equipment to fill a small warehouse. Hana walked up to it slowly, ignoring the technicians who watched her from behind their monitors. The crystal surface was beautiful. She had seen pictures, but they hadn't done it justice. The symbols moved like water, flowing from one pattern to another, never quite settling into anything recognizable. They glowed with a soft blue light that seemed to pulse gently like breathing. "Hello?" Hana said quietly. The symbols shifted. They moved faster for a moment, swirling in what almost looked like excitement before settling back into their steady flow. "Interesting," Hana murmured. For the next week, she did nothing but watch. While other scientists tried their experiments and ran their tests, Hana just sat in a chair 3 meters from the artifact and observed. She brought a notebook and filled page after page with sketches of the symbol patterns, noting how they changed and when. Dr. Kim, one of the senior researchers, said on day 5, his tone impatient, "We brought you here to solve this problem, not to stare at it." "I'm working," Hana replied without looking away from the artifact. "It doesn't look like work." "Then you don't understand what work looks like." The researcher left in a huff. Hana didn't care. She was starting to see something that nobody else had noticed. The symbols weren't random. They followed patterns, but not mathematical ones. They followed emotional ones. When she was frustrated, they became jagged and sharp. When she was calm, they flowed smoothly. When she was curious, they seemed to open up, spreading wider across the crystal surface as if inviting her to look closer. It was responding to her feelings, not her thoughts. By the end of the second week, Hana had stopped going to her quarters. She slept on a cot in the corner of the lab, ate meals at her workstation, and only left the room when absolutely necessary. The artifact was teaching her its language, but it was slow and she was impatient. Daehyun visited her every day. He would bring her food that she barely touched and coffee that she drank too quickly. "You need to rest," he said on day 19, setting down a tray with something that might have been dinner. "You look terrible." "I'm close to something," Hana said, her eyes never leaving the artifact. "I can feel it, Hana." Daehyun's voice was firmer now. He moved to stand between her and the artifact, forcing her to look at him. "You're going to make yourself sick. When was the last time you showered? Or slept more than 2 hours? I don't remember. It doesn't matter." "It does matter." His expression was concerned, almost pained. The artifact has been here for 50,000 years. It can wait another day while you take care of yourself. Hana wanted to argue, but she was too tired. She let Daehyun lead her to her quarters. Let him make sure she ate something, let him promise to wake her if anything happened with the artifact. She fell asleep the moment her head touched the pillow. When she woke up 8 hours later, she felt better but also guilty. 8 hours was 8 hours she could have spent working. She rushed back to the lab expecting to find that she had missed something crucial, but the artifact looked the same as it always did. Symbols flowing in their endless patterns, waiting patiently. See? Daehyun said from his workstation in the corner. He had stayed there all night, watching over both her and the artifact. It waited for you. Something about that made Hana pause. It waited. Why did those words feel important? The weeks blurred together. Day 37. Day 42. Day 59. Hana filled notebooks with observations, theories, and frustrated scribbles when nothing worked. She tried everything she could think of. She tried touching the artifact. It felt warm and seemed to hum faintly under her fingers. But nothing else happened. She tried speaking to it in different languages. Korean, English, Mandarin. Even some ancient languages that linguists had reconstructed. The symbols shifted in response to her voice, but they didn't unlock. She tried mathematical sequences, chemical formulas, and even poetry. Nothing. Director Yoon visited on day 67. He looked even more tired than before, and his expression was grim. "How is the progress?" he asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "Slow," Hana admitted. "But I'm learning." "Time is running out, Dr. Kim. The military is already preparing equipment to transport the artifact to their facility. They've promised the politicians results, and politicians don't like waiting. They'll destroy it," Hana said flatly. "Cut it open like they're dissecting a frog in a school lab. All that history, all that knowledge just gone because we're too impatient and too scared to understand it properly." "I know." Director Yoon rubbed his eyes. "That's why I need you to succeed. You have 4 weeks left. Make them count." After he left, Hana stood in front of the artifact and felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Desperation. The artifact seemed to sense it. The symbols darkened, moving more slowly, almost sadly. "I don't know what you want," Hana whispered. "I've tried everything. Every code, every language, every pattern I can think of." "Why won't you open?" The symbols continued their slow, sad dance. That night, Hana had the dream. She was standing in front of the artifact, but the lab was gone. She was in a vast, dark space filled with stars. The artifact floated before her, larger than before, and the symbols had stopped moving. They had formed words in Korean. "Why do you try to break what is already open?" Hana tried to respond, but she had no voice in the dream. She could only watch as the symbols shifted again. "We do not lock our doors against friends. We wait for them to knock." The scene changed. She saw herself standing before the artifact in the real lab, but from outside her own body. She watched herself type endless codes into keyboards, run scans, perform tests. She looked desperate, aggressive, like she was trying to break into someone's house instead of being invited in. A door opens when you greet the one who waits behind it. Hana woke up gasping, her heart pounding. She sat up in her cot and looked at the artifact across the lab. It was 3 in the morning and she was alone. The symbols glowed softly in the darkness, pulsing gently. A greeting. Not a code. Not a mathematical sequence or an alien language. Just a greeting. She got up and walked slowly to the artifact. Her hands were shaking. 73 days of work, and the answer might be the simplest thing in the world. "Hello?" she said again, like she had on the first day. "My name is Hana, Kim Hana." The symbols swirled faster. A keyboard made of light appeared in the air in front of her, hovering at waist height. The keys were labeled in Korean characters. Hana's breath caught in her throat. This was new. This had never happened before. The dream echoed in her mind. A greeting. An introduction. Not breaking in but knocking. Not demanding entry but asking politely. Her fingers moved to the light keyboard. They felt solid under her touch, though they glowed like the symbols on the crystal. Everyone had been trying to input codes, crack passwords, solve puzzles. But what if there was no puzzle? What if it was just waiting for someone to be polite? Hana thought about all the complex things she could type. Mathematical proofs. Chemical formulas. The history of human civilization. Anything to prove that humanity was worthy, intelligent, advanced enough to deserve what the artifact protected. But the dream had been clear, simple, direct. She took a deep breath and typed the simplest thing she could think of. Her name, Kim Hana. Kim Hana. For a moment nothing happened, then the artifact exploded with light. They learned too late that humanity didn't climb to the top of Earth's food chain by being easy prey. We're top predators and we'd be 3 days after the artifact opened. Hana still hadn't left the station. She couldn't. Every government on Earth wanted to talk to her. Every news organization wanted an interview. Scientists from every field imaginable had questions only she could answer. The woman who had opened the sky, they called her. The key to humanity's future. The bridge between the old universe and the new one. Hana hated every second of it. She sat in yet another conference room, listening to yet another group of politicians argue about what humanity should do with the Founder's gifts. The room was full of faces on video screens, representatives from every major nation on Earth, all talking at once and none of them listening to each other. The technology should be shared equally among all nations, the Chinese representative was saying. No single country can be trusted with such power. How do we know it's even safe? The American representative countered. This could be a trap. An alien civilization could be using this to weaken us, make us dependent on their technology. We should proceed with extreme caution, the European Union representative added. Move slowly, test everything thoroughly before implementation. We don't have time to move slowly. Someone else shouted. Other nations might get ahead of us. We need to secure these advantages now. Hana rubbed her temples, feeling a headache building behind her eyes. She had tried to explain multiple times what the Founder's gifts actually meant, but politicians heard what they wanted to hear, and what they mostly heard was power and advantage and opportunity. Excuse me. Daehyun's voice cut through the argument. He had been sitting quietly in the corner, but now he stood up, his usual easy expression replaced with something harder. With respect, you're all missing the point. The politicians fell silent, surprised that someone other than Hana was speaking. The test wasn't just about opening the artifact, Daehyun continued. It was about how we approach it. Dr. Kim succeeded because she treated it with respect, not as something to control or exploit. If we approach the Founder's knowledge the same way you're all talking now, with suspicion and greed and thoughts of military advantage, we'll fail. The artifacts will close again and we'll lose everything. That's speculation, one of the politicians said dismissively. We don't know that. Actually, we do. Hana spoke up, grateful for Daehyun's intervention. The artifact showed me what happened to other species. Some of them passed the first test, got access to the basic gifts, and then destroyed themselves because they couldn't handle the responsibility. The Founders don't just give out power to anyone who asks. They watch, they test. And if we prove we can't be trusted, they'll take it all away. Director Yoon, who had been listening quietly, leaned forward. What exactly did the Founders show you, Dr. Kim? You've been vague about the details. Hana took a deep breath. She had been avoiding this conversation because she knew how people would react, but they needed to know. The ship near Titan isn't alone, she said. There are others, hundreds of them, scattered across the galaxy, all containing knowledge and technology. But they're not all the same. They're ranked by levels, like achievements in a game. Each level requires passing a test, proving that a species has the wisdom to handle what comes next. She pulled up a holographic display, showing a map the artifact had given her. Stars and planets filled the air, with glowing markers indicating the locations of Founder ships. The ship we found is Level 1. It contains the basics: faster than light travel, clean energy generation, advanced medical technology, and communication systems that work across vast distances, things that could solve most of humanity's current problems. The room was silent now, everyone staring at the map with hungry eyes. But to access Level 2 ships, Hana continued, we have to prove we can use Level 1 technology responsibly. That means no wars fought with Founder weapons, no exploitation of their energy systems to destroy environments, no using their medical advances to create biological weapons. The Founders will be watching, and if we fail, everything shuts down. How are they watching? Someone asked suspiciously. Are there aliens monitoring us right now? No, Hana said. The Founders themselves are gone. They evolved beyond physical form millions of years ago. If the artifact's information is correct, But they built their gifts with safeguards. The artifacts are intelligent in a way. They observe and evaluate. If we misuse what they give us, they'll simply stop working. That's absurd, a military general said. We should be able to use the technology however we want. It's ours now. Hana felt anger flash through her, hot and sudden. It's not ours. It's borrowed. Loaned to us by beings who were building civilizations when our ancestors were still learning to make fire. They're giving us a chance to grow up, to become something better than what we are. And if we treat it like you're suggesting, like it's just another weapon to hoard and use against each other, we deserve to lose it. The general's face turned red, but before he could respond, another voice spoke up. It was the Korean representative, an older woman named Ambassador Lee, who had been watching the argument with calculating eyes. Dr. Kim is right, Ambassador Lee said calmly. This isn't about military advantage or political power. This is about whether humanity can mature as a species. We either work together and earn the right to these gifts, or we fight over them and lose everything. It's that simple. Nothing is ever that simple, someone muttered, but Ambassador Lee ignored them. Dr. Kim, you've become the primary interface between humanity and the Founder's artifacts. What do you recommend we do? Hana hadn't expected the question to be directed at her so bluntly. She looked around the room at all the faces watching her, waiting for her answer. Start small, she said finally. Take the clean energy technology first. It can't be weaponized easily, and it could solve the climate crisis within a decade. Share it freely with all nations. Prove that we can cooperate instead of compete. Show the artifacts that we're learning. And if some nations refuse to cooperate, someone asked, if they try to keep the technology for themselves, then we fail the test, Hana said simply. And 50,000 years from now, some other species will find these ships and get the chance we threw away. The meeting went on for 3 more hours, but Hana had stopped listening. She could see the patterns emerging. Some nations would cooperate. Others would see this as an opportunity to gain advantage. There would be conflicts, probably even violence, before humanity figured out how to handle this, if they figured it out at all. After the meeting finally ended, Hana returned to the laboratory where the artifact still glowed softly, waiting. Daehyun found her there an hour later, sitting on the floor with her back against the wall, just staring at the Founder's gift. You did well in there, he said, sitting down beside her. Did I? Because it feels like I just watched humanity start to tear itself apart. Give them time. People are scared. Change this big is terrifying, but they'll figure it out. Hana wasn't so sure. She thought about the images the artifact had shown her, of species that had destroyed themselves with power they weren't ready for. Some had been smarter than humans. Some had been more advanced. But intelligence and advancement weren't the same as wisdom. Daehyun, she said quietly, what if we're not ready? What if I open something humanity isn't mature enough to handle? He was quiet for a long moment, then said, the Founders didn't think so. The artifact opened for you because you approached it the right way. That means something. It means humans are capable of the kind of respect and openness the Founders were looking for. We just have to choose to be that way consistently, not just once. That's a lot of pressure to put on an entire species. Yeah, he agreed. But think about it this way. For 50,000 years that ship sat out there waiting for someone to finally say hello properly. And someone did, you did. If humanity wasn't ready at all, the artifact never would have responded in the first place. Hana wanted to believe that. She wanted to think that her simple act of typing her name meant humanity had potential, that they could grow into the kind of species the Founders had hoped would find their gifts. But potential and achievement were 2 different things. The artifact pulsed gently, and new text appeared on its surface. Growth is not easy. It requires failure and learning, patience and determination. We do not expect perfection. We expect effort. Show us your effort, young species. Show us you are trying. Hana read the words and felt something ease in her chest. The Founders didn't expect humanity to be perfect. They just expected humans to try. That was something they could do. Maybe. Come on, Daehyun said, standing and offering her his hand. You haven't eaten anything since breakfast and it's past midnight. Let's get you some food. Hana took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. As they left the laboratory, she glanced back at the artifact one more time. It glowed steady and warm, like a nightlight in a child's room. Like a teacher waiting patiently for a student to understand a difficult lesson. Like a door standing open, waiting to see if humanity would choose to walk through it with wisdom. or try to break it down with force. The next few years would determine which choice humanity made. Hana just hoped she would be. 8 months after the opening, Hana was famous and she hated it. Her face was on every news channel. Her name was in every article about the founders. People stopped her in hallways asking for autographs or pictures. Someone had even made merchandise, t-shirts with her face and the slogan, "She opened the sky," printed underneath. Daehyun had bought one as a joke. Hana had thrown it in the recycling bin, but fame was the least of her problems. The real issue was that she had become the only person who could consistently communicate with the artifacts. Other people could access the basic information now, read the manuals and guides that the founders had left behind. But when complex questions arose, when decisions needed to be made about how to use the technology safely, the artifacts responded best to Hana. It was like they trusted her, and that trust had made her indispensable, which meant she couldn't escape. She stood now in a new laboratory, one built specifically to study the founders' technology. The clean energy device sat in the center of the room, a sphere about the size of a basketball that glowed with soft golden light. According to the founders' documentation, this single device could power a city of 10 million people indefinitely, with zero pollution and no need for fuel. It seemed too good to be true. But all the tests confirmed it worked exactly as advertised. The problem was deciding what to do with it. 37 nations have formally requested copies of the device, Director Yoon said. Reading from a tablet, 12 more have made informal inquiries, and 3 have threatened to take it by force if we don't share willingly. Hana closed her eyes and sighed. We've had this conversation 6 times already. The answer hasn't changed. We need to create a global distribution plan that ensures everyone gets access equally. No nation gets priority. No one gets military advantages. That's idealistic, a new voice said. Hana turned to see a woman in a military uniform entering the lab. Colonel Baek, one of the liaison officers assigned to the project. She had been a problem from day one. In the real world, we have to protect our interests. Korea should get first access. We found the artifact. Dr. Kim is Korean. We have rights here. The artifact isn't Korean property, Hana said, keeping her voice level even though she wanted to shout. It's not anyone's property. It's a gift to all of humanity, conditional on us proving we can share it responsibly. So you say, but I don't see any aliens here to enforce that. For all we know, you're misinterpreting their intentions. Maybe they expect the strongest nations to take control and lead. Hana felt her temper snap. Do you think I'm lying? Do you think I made all this up? I think you're a scientist, not a diplomat or a military strategist. You don't understand how the world actually works. Before Hana could respond, Daehyun stepped between them. Colonel Baek, with respect, Dr. Kim has spent more time studying the founders' intentions than anyone alive. If she says equitable distribution is important, we should listen. Colonel Baek's expression hardened. And who are you to tell me what to do? You're just an engineer. I'm the engineer who keeps all this equipment running, Daehyun said calmly. And I'm Dr. Kim's colleague. Which means I'm asking you politely to leave her alone so she can do her work. For a moment, it looked like Colonel Baek might argue further, but something in Daehyun's expression, usually so friendly and easy, had turned to steel. The colonel turned and left without another word. Hana let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Thank you. Anytime. Daehyun's usual smile returned. Though I think I just made an enemy of the military liaison. Welcome to my world. I make new enemies every day now. It was meant to be a joke, but Daehyun didn't laugh. I'm worried about you, Hana. You're carrying too much. You barely sleep anymore. You skip meals. You look exhausted all the time. I'm fine. You're not fine. Nobody could be fine under this much pressure. Hana wanted to argue, but she was too tired. He was right. She wasn't fine. She was drowning in responsibility, pulled in a dozen directions at once, and everyone seemed to think she had all the answers when she was barely holding herself together. I don't know how to stop, she admitted quietly. If I step back, if I take a break, what happens? The wrong people make the wrong decisions, and humanity fails the test before we even really start. Daehyun moved closer and took her hand. It was a simple gesture, but it made Hana realize how much she had missed human contact. She had been so focused on artifacts and aliens and the fate of humanity that she had forgotten she was human too. You're not responsible for all of humanity, Daehyun said gently. You opened a door. That was incredible. But you don't have to drag everyone through it by yourself. It feels like I do. Then let me help. Let Director Yoon help. Let the people who actually care about doing this right help. You don't have to carry this alone. Before Hana could respond, alarms started blaring throughout the facility. Red lights flashed on every wall. Director Yoon's voice came over the intercom, tense and urgent. All personnel, we have a security breach. Unknown hostiles in the building. Dr. Kim, get to the secure room immediately. Hana's blood went cold. What's happening? Taehyun was already moving, pulling her toward the exit. We need to go, now. They ran through corridors filled with panicked scientists and security personnel. Hana could hear shouting in the distance, the sound of weapons being fired. Her mind raced, trying to understand what was happening. Then she remembered the warnings. The messages that had been appearing on various forums and social media. A group calling themselves Terra Pura, Earth Pure. They believed the founders' gifts were a trap, a way to make humanity dependent and weak. They wanted the artifacts destroyed before humanity lost its independence. Hana had thought they were just angry people on the internet, making noise but no real threat. She had been wrong. Daehyun led her to a reinforced door and typed in a security code. The door slid open, revealing a small room with monitors showing security camera feeds from around the facility. Director Yoon was already there along with several security officers. How many? Daehyun asked immediately. At least 20, Director Yoon said grimly. They're well armed and organized. This isn't some random protest. This is a planned attack. One of the monitors showed the main laboratory. Armed figures in black tactical gear were placing devices around the room, moving with military precision. Hana's heart sank as she realized what the devices were. Explosives, she whispered. They're going to blow up the energy device. Not just that, one of the security officers said, pointing to another monitor. They've placed charges throughout the facility. If those go off, they'll destroy everything. All the founders' technology we've been studying, all the research, everything. How long do we have? Director Yoon demanded. Their leader is broadcasting on all frequencies, another officer said, pulling up an audio feed. A distorted voice filled the room, speaking in Korean. Humanity must forge its own path. We cannot accept charity from ghosts. We cannot become slaves to alien technology. In 1 hour, we will destroy this facility and everything in it. This is not a negotiation. This is salvation. The broadcast cut off, leaving silence in the secure room. 1 hour, Director Yoon said. We need to evacuate everyone and call for military support. There isn't time, Hana said, her mind racing. Even if we get everyone out, they'll still destroy all the research, all the technology. Years of work, gone. And more than that, this will be seen as humanity rejecting the founders' gifts. The artifacts might interpret this as us failing the test. What are you suggesting? Daehyun asked, though his expression said he already knew and didn't like it. I need to get to the main laboratory. I need to access the artifact and see if there's a way to stop this. Absolutely not, Director Yoon said immediately. It's too dangerous. Those people are armed and clearly willing to kill. If I don't try, everything we've worked for ends tonight. Terra Pura wins and humanity loses its chance at the stars. Hana, no. Daehyun grabbed her arm. There has to be another way. There isn't. You know there isn't. She met his eyes, seeing fear and worry there, but also understanding. The founders are testing us. This is part of it. Can we overcome our own fear and mistrust? Can we choose growth over destruction? This isn't your responsibility, Daehyun said desperately. Maybe not. But it's my choice. She pulled away gently and turned to Director Yoon. I need access to the maintenance tunnels. They should still be secure. Director Yoon looked like he wanted to refuse, but after a long moment he nodded and pulled up a map on one of the monitors. There's a tunnel that leads directly under the main lab. But Hana, if you're doing this, you're not going alone. He looked at Daehyun, who nodded immediately. I'm going with her. Someone needs to make sure she doesn't do anything stupid. We're all doing something stupid, Hana said. But it's the right kind of stupid. They moved quickly, leaving the secure room and heading for the maintenance access. As they descended into the tunnels below the facility, Hana tried not to think about the explosives waiting above them, or the armed extremists who would kill them if discovered, or the fact that she had no real plan beyond reaching the artifact and hoping it would help. All she knew was that she had opened a door, and now she had to make sure humanity didn't slam it shut out of fear. Above them, the clock counted down.